In today's show, iPad Air could get a spring refresh, and the iPad Pro redesign gets redesigned. I'm MacSafe Dave, and I simplify Apple so that everything just works for you. And if you want the latest Apple leaks, news and rumours every weekday at 1300 UTC, like the video, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell. And yes, first story today, the iPad Air could get a refresh this spring with the A15 inside, the wider angle centre stage camera on the front. Basically, a bigger iPad mini. And if this is the case, then I have a weird feeling that they actually wanted to put this out before Christmas, alongside the iPad mini and alongside the iPhone 13. It just feels like this has been pushed back, not because they wanted to do a spring iPad Air release, but simply that perhaps there was an issue with component supply. We know that Apple reduced their iPhone orders at one point for the iPhone 13 because there weren't enough components available, and perhaps they just had to move some of those components over from the iPad Air line. That's quite a possibility. And given that the iPad Air had got a complete refresh with the redesign the previous year, but the iPad mini had been waiting forever, it makes sense that they would keep the iPad mini going and maybe just hold off on the Air. What does this mean for Apple? It means that later this year we could get yet another iPad Air refresh with the A16 chip at the same time as the iPad mini and at the same time as the iPhone 14. So is it a good time to buy the iPad Air if it gets renewed this spring? I would argue probably not. Is it a good time to buy it now, before the new design comes out? 100% not. The iPad Air is probably, and this is the same iPad that I'm using as my monitor for this because it's my iPad, it's the worst value that there is in the iPad lineup right now. $600 nearly. You don't get the ProMotion display. You don't get center stage. You don't get 5G on the cellular models. It's $100 more than the iPad mini. That kind of makes sense. But there's a few of these features, like center stage, that you get in the cheapest iPads you can buy, but not in the iPad Air. And that's a bit annoying. Center stage, of course, was introduced with the iPad Pro, and speaking of the iPad Pro, I suggested a while ago that it could get a glass back. That had then been kind of confirmed by a lot of people, and all of a sudden everyone's changed their minds again, and it's not getting a complete glass back to enable the wireless charging, but apparently Apple has run into some issues with it being too fragile, as everyone worried that it might do, and it looks like Apple might just be giving it a larger Apple logo which can house the wireless charging. And as we've all come to know, wireless charging can't happen through metal, it needs to go through glass or plastic or something that's not metallic. So this kind of makes sense. It keeps the strength and rigidity of the design, but it also allows this charge to go through, and it could allow for that reverse wireless charging that we've been hearing about. So if Apple does this, absolutely fine. Quite cool with that idea. I think the glass back would have looked pretty awesome, but as everyone was worried about, it could have been quite fragile. Probably a good choice from Apple's point of view here. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments section. Are you down with a bigger Apple logo? And are they likely to rotate it 90 degrees and have this as kind of a landscape mode by default from now on? And let's get into some of your questions. This comes from Armin Dressler. iCave answers, how could M1 Max Duo or Quad be called properly in an upcoming iMac or Mac Pro? M1 Max uses a maximum package power of 90 plus watts when using the CPU and the GPU at the same time. This would lead to 180 plus watts in a Duo or 360 plus watts in a Quad. That's a lot more than Intels Alder Lake, which already runs into thermal throttling if not properly cooled. Will Apple return to liquid cooling like for the Power Mac G5 in 2004 and 2005? Now my guess would be no, but remember as well, this is not going to be just a single chip. It's actually going to have quite a lot of surface area. That means that actually cooling it shouldn't be as much of a challenge, and also it's very difficult to compare this directly to things like Alder Lake, because this is an SoC, this is all of your graphics and your CPU built into this one SoC. There's no reason that they have to be physically that close to each other in the chassis as well. I think they might go in pairs, and they might be on individual cards even within the chassis, which does give them a little bit more opportunity for cooling. 180 watts on each at peak, that might not be too bad. It depends how long these things are going to run at peak performance, or how quickly they are able to get through the processing that they need to at that level. I don't think Apple would go for liquid cooling, but who knows, maybe they've got something up their sleeves. Maybe we're going to be looking at like vapor chambers on these. That's a possibility too. James Apple asks, will you shave your beard if the M2 MacBook Air is nowhere to be found? I'm assuming that you mean in the spring for this one. I guess I could. I do think it's going to be there. I know the guys from Max Tech don't think it will be there, but it seems like 50-50 on who thinks it will, who thinks it won't. I think Gurmy's saying it will, so yeah, I think my beard could be on the line for this one. And James Apple, why don't you own AirPods Pro or the newer ones coming in Q4 of 2022? You must have some kryptonite for anything pro level earphones. So here's the thing, I've never said that I won't get the AirPods Pro this year. I've just said that I haven't had them so far. I'm quite happy with the AirPods 3rd generation. They sound awesome. Although when I reviewed the U-Green earbuds that had the active noise cancellation and the silicone ear tips, I actually found them less uncomfortable than I expected to. I honestly didn't find them uncomfortable at all. I do still prefer the feel of the hard plastic tips in my ears, if I'm honest. So unless there's something very, very compelling about the AirPods Pro this year, I probably won't be going for them. I'm not saying I won't. I'm just saying I don't think I will. If they get lossless, I might have to give them a try. Team Kinetix, IK Answers is a common request for iPhones to switch to USB-C instead of Lightning. There's reviewers complaining about the huge amount of time to transfer raw ProRes video over Lightning. With AirDrop and cloud storage in 2022, why is anyone using Lightning to transfer files? Surely at this stage, Lightning is just a legacy charging port. And honestly, I kind of agree, because I do all of my filming on this phone. It has Lightning, obviously, and it's worked out fine for me. I've had no issues. I don't use Lightning for transferring. I did the other day when AirDrop for some reason wasn't working, but I've always found that AirDrop is plenty quick enough, especially if you're moving your files over pretty quickly. Once it goes up to iCloud and then it optimizes the storage on the device, then it has to re-download it, and that's a bit annoying. But at that point, you should be able to go onto your Mac, into Photos, and grab it from iCloud. So yeah, it doesn't make that much sense to me. I still think that there's probably about 1% of people with an iPhone that would actually care and be happy if they went to a USB-C port. I think there's probably maybe 30 or 40% of people that would be really annoyed because they've just got Lightning accessories, and most people that own these things aren't transferring big old files. I understand for the frustration for the people that are, and I think it would be a good port to have on an iPhone, but I also think it would still be more of a pain for more people than it is an advantage for a few people to change it at all. But I know this always makes people tell me how wrong I am, so I'm looking forward to seeing that down in the comments. And Josh asks, IK Answers, have you ever thought about working at Apple, Dave? If so, what area would you work in? And this is another interesting one, because my wife back in the day did say that that's a job that I should do, just because I always love talking about Apple and stuff. However, here's the thing, if I was to go and work for Apple, I wouldn't be doing this show, because once you work for Apple, I'm pretty sure you're going to be under some NDAs. They're certainly not going to want me talking about leaks and stuff that might be coming in the future from Apple. I mean, they probably don't want me talking about that now, but I also don't think they care that much, because not enough people listen to me. I do have some friends that do work at Apple. They say that they really enjoy it, but they've also said that, you know, they can't discuss rumours, really. Certainly can't discuss them with customers. I think if they were to do a video like this online, they would probably get a bit of a slapped wrist and a bit of a telling off. So, yeah, I don't think that's a practical thing anymore. Also, I really like my new job. So, you know, that's another reason to not go and work for them. But if I was to work for Apple, one of the things that I think that Apple really should do is have, like, an archivist. Not just like internally, but also someone that kind of records the history, and then maybe, and I know this is kind of not the way that Apple works at all, but goes through some of the stories and kind of releases stories around the design process of some of the classic devices. Maybe at this point it would be safe for Apple to officially kind of release their version of the iPod story. how it was designed, what were the choices that they went through. I think we're far enough removed from that product family that that would make sense now, and I think it would be absolutely fascinating. And I think Apple should maybe even have their own museum that's open to the public that kind of archives all of what they've done in the past. Now, I know that Apple is very much a forward-looking company, but then they did do that coffee table book, the Apple Designed in California book, I think it was called, and I think that was like a great nod to some of the stuff that they'd done in the past. I don't know if it was kind of commissioned because they knew that Johnny Ive was on his way out and it was kind of part of his legacy, or if it's just something that they decided to do on a whim. But regardless, I'd love to see a bit more of Apple embracing their history and talking about what they've done in the past, what they did well, and what they would do differently in future. And speaking of California design, don't forget about our Cupertino range of stuff. I'm really proud of it, and as soon as I actually get paid from this new job, I might even buy some myself. Thanks so much for watching. Thank you to all the Patreons over here, and we will see you in the next one.